Okay, so as I turn that off, okay, Edward, take it away.
All right. Let me get that. Boom. Okay. All right. So the title of this presentation is Digitizing the Gakunishi, but probably a better title might be a brief introduction to Google Sheet macros. I don't know how much familiarity people have with macros, but I'm just going to go through it as if you've never touched it before. So first of all, just want to give a big thanks out to Jose and Adam for their team at Online Teaching Japan for hosting the summer session. I only joined the Facebook group from this year, I think, but I've found the interactions and posts to be a valuable tool in exploring the different aspects of ICT in the classroom. So thank you very much for putting all this together. I think I'm one of the few high school teachers in this group. I'm not sure, but if you're not a high school teacher or have never taught in a high school or have never been a homeroom teacher, then you may not be too familiar with what I'll be talking about today. However, it is also possible that while participating, you may have this eureka moment that provides you with a new idea to better your own daily routine. So I don't want to say much about me, other than I've been a content English teacher at Kyoto Garai Nishi High School for over 8 years in the course of International and Culture Studies. This course has provided students for over 30 years now with a partial English immersion experience throughout their 3 years of high school life. And when it comes to ICT and education, our particular course teachers have always been the vanguard of the school. And it's because of that that I'm also a member of the high school's ICT promotion committee. I do hold a level 2 Google Educator certificate, and I'm also an Apple Distinguished Educator, but that does not make me an expert in their platforms. What I do love to do, though, is to take on challenges that I think can better the education experience and tinker with this or that until I can come up with something that works. One such story that I was able to tell earlier this year was about taking a interscholastic conference online. And I told this story through Kyoto JALSA Community Spotlight. And you can find a copy of that presentation at the link and QR code on this slide. If you're interested later, please don't go to it now. Later, if you have time, I'll put this slideshow on the session homepage later. So there are 3 parts to this session that I would like to cover. I see 2 things in the chat real quick. Oh, sorry. Okay. Okay. There are 3 parts of the session that I would like to cover. First, I want to make sure you know what a gakunishi is, and I'm talking about and why I'm talking about it and why I focused on digitizing it. Then I want to take you through the process of how not only did I make it, but how I update it every day using macros in the Google Sheets, which I think is the main part of this presentation. Then finally, I would like to open the time to discussion on how maybe we can, take other daily chores, so to speak, and digitize them and or make it easier to update or upkeep using macros or other methods. I guess I think the word is automation, automatizing these. Okay, so chiming in on the topic of this hour, the course of International Cultural Studies is unique in that each homeroom has 2 homeroom teachers, a Japanese teacher and a foreign teacher. Most homerooms in a high school usually only have 1 homeroom teacher, or they have a homeroom teacher and a sub-homeroom teacher. This particular course is 2 homeroom teachers that works side by side. So it's kind of like 2 codes working together. And every homeroom teacher, every homeroom has what's called a nichoksha, or which is the daily class leader, a student that kind of handles the making sure classes have all the responsibilities, all the information and whatnot. And it's a different student every day. And that student is responsible for completing the homeroom's gakunishi, or what is called the daily journal. If you've never seen a gakunishi or a daily journal, this is pretty much what it is. It's a multi-page log of each school day, which classes were taken, what the content was, and any other announcements or information that may be important for each particular day. My homeroom teacher partner preferred to have 2 of each. So there was a daily journal written in Japanese and 1 written in English. In 2019, before the pandemic, our school administration actually tried to do away with these books as part of a paperless initiative. Homeroom teachers were not happy about this decision, so many of them actually tried to make their own paper notebook. But I brought up the idea of a digital version, and my homeroom partner was very supportive of the idea. So at that time, students were not part of any kind of Google Workspace ecosystem or any kind of LMS. So I actually used a private Gmail account that I had students record the journal with Google Keep. Google Keep is actually a note-taking app inside Google Workspace. I used an old iPad that would be given to the day's Nichoksha, and I think it worked for that year. This is pretty much a screenshot of that iPad, and if you look down in the gray area, these are actually all the student logs. And then on the top in the colors, were actually user announcements or comments that I wanted the students to read. So for what it was, it worked. And this is an example of one of the students' logs. Now, there were issues with this. And specifically, I wanted other teachers to see this as an alternative to that book. But issues with this that would probably drive most homeroom teachers away. One is that it looks very unstructured. I mean, it looks more like a free writing journal, and you can even see there really isn't that much writing because there was no structure to specifically what they're supposed to write. They were given instructions on what to write, but because this is a note-taking app, there wasn't any structure, and I know Japanese homeroom teachers would not appreciate that at all. And so also, Google Keep is not written the same as other Google Workspace apps. So it's actually difficult to share with other teachers, which is also a big part of this. I actually tried to paste each day's journal into a Google Doc, but that actually proved to be too time consuming for me every day. So though the administrators were very enthusiastic about the idea, other homeroom teachers, as I said, were reluctant and continue to be reluctant to move away from that book because it's a recorded history of the student's life. And so it's actually becomes like a piece of memorabilia for some of these homeroom teachers. So the book actually came back in 2020, but that was actually before the pandemic struck. And so when that happened, all the homerooms and all the classes went online, and students were issued Google email addresses, school administrator email addresses, and we started using Google Workspace for the purpose of initiating online classes. So I thought this would be a good opportunity to fiddle with the Gaku Nishi a little bit more. And so that's when I started toying with the idea of using Google Sheets. And so this is actually what I kind of came up with. So again, what you see on the screen, that's the page out of the book. And then on the right side here is the actual Google Sheet that I made. Okay, and so the biggest thing is that it needs to look identical to the book. And I think I accomplished that for the most part. Students also need autonomy to be themselves in writing, which is hard given the lack of proper IC training a lot of high school students receive or don't receive. But as I'll show in a little bit, they actually figured out emojis fairly quickly, as one of the examples. But homeroom teachers also need to be able to type comments. So the collaborative functions of Google Drive made this extremely easy to do, which also allows other teachers to view the file if they so wish. So I want to show you just a couple examples here. Everybody can see the Google Sheet that I just showed up? Yeah. Okay. So this is actually from the first year. No, this is from 2021. So it's just from this previous year. And so, students very quickly figured out how to fill it out. And in the red here, as a teacher, able to write the comments. And the nice thing about this is that I kind of have a little bit more liberty of how and where I can write the comments. In this case, I was able, you can even provide a URL to something that I thought connected to a comment that a student wrote. And of course, as I said earlier, students were able to figure out the emojis fairly quickly. And in some part, you can change colors and cells. Students, not having the proper training, don't know much about how to insert things or whatnot, but students could insert drawings, they could insert images of their own if they wanted to as well. So the idea of kind of writing as they feel, which is what homeroom teachers like to see happen in these daily journals, Google Sheets does allow that. Okay. So, I mean, I think this looks great, but having to replicate this page every day, and what I mean is, if you look down here, right, each sheet has is named based on the day. And if I went ahead and just made 100 pages with each individual day, that makes it hard for the students to actually find which page they're supposed to be writing on. So what I decided to do is just make a new page every day. But that is time consuming. So that's actually where the macros come in. Okay, so go back here real quick. All right. So when I hear the term macro, I usually think of Microsoft Office. And even the thought of that scares me because macros were something used by advanced users of Office. And I'm not that. But the method of recording and executing a macro in Google Sheets is surprisingly quite simple. So at this point, I'm going to go through a step-by-step process of putting this journal together for daily use. If you have a second device handy, I would recommend you follow along and try it yourself if you've never experienced the thrill of recording macros in Google Sheets. You're going to need a PC, as you cannot record macros using a smartphone or tablet, but a Mac, Windows, or Chromebook computer is fine. The file I will use is available for copying on this session's page at the onlineteachingjapan.com. So if you would like to, I would like you to go ahead and find that page or find the link to that Google Sheet and make a copy into your own personal Google Drive if you would like to follow along with me. So I'll give you a couple minutes to set that up if you like. And if you're not sure how to do that, you can go ahead and ask questions right now, and I can help you through that.
Would it be easier to put it up in the chat box, a link?
Let me see if I can find the link. So let me see here.
Adam posted up, I think.
Yeah, let me go to the
Yeah, it's just the button that's on the page, right? The OTJ August 24 sample.
right,
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
So
that's the link that I just put in the chat box.
oh, okay, thank you very much.
All right.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, I see a thumbs up from Susan, so I think she's okay. Okay, a couple others as well. All right. Okay, so I'm going to move on from here, and I'll go slow. I think it's a fairly easy process. So even if you're unable to do it through here, I think you can do it later. So, but before we start, just to kind of give you a little idea of what macros is from Google's developers website. So Google Sheets lets you record macros that duplicate a specific series of user interface interactions. So what it's talking about there is the keyboard strokes that you define. Once you've recorded a macro, you can link it to a keyboard shortcut in the form of Control, Alt, Shift, and a number. Or if you're a Mac user like I am, it's actually Command, Option, Shift for Mac users. You can use that shortcut to quickly execute the exact macro steps again and again and again and again. So the location of those buttons, if you're on a Mac, are in these, Command, Option. On a Windows PC, it's in the exact location. They're just called Alt and Control. Okay. All right. So every day, as I mentioned, I need a new sheet. So there's three things I need to happen in this macro to do that. First, I need to duplicate a blank template sheet. Okay, so I cannot duplicate a sheet that's already been written on. It has to be a new blank sheet. I need the new sheet to show up when the student first accesses the file. So if you're familiar with Sheets or Excel, when you create a new sheet inside the file, by default, it actually shows up on the right side of the sheet that you duplicated, or when you create a new sheet, it just ends up on the far right side. For the student to see that particular sheet, when they open the file, it has to be on the far left, right? So it has to be the very first sheet available. So what this macro needs to do is it needs to move that new sheet to the far left. Okay. And finally, the sheet needs to be renamed to the day's date. Okay. And this actually makes it easier for the student to reference, and also makes it easy for the teacher to reference if they need to go back and relook at something. Okay. So I'm going to go to a okay. So I'm going to go to a blank copy that I made, and I'm just hoping this works. Okay. So if you have the file in front of you, okay, so the name of this sheet is template. Okay, so that's the blank template that I want to use. Okay, when you want to record a macro inside the browser window, you'll see up in the menu one called Tools. You click on that, and right there you have macros. Okay, and if you've never recorded a macro before, the only option available there is to record macro. Okay, so when you click on that, the recording actually automatically starts. You see this window pop up down here. Okay, so anything that you do, for example, if I change, if I change the size of a cell, right? You see this action 1 come up, resize columns, right? If I type something into a cell, action 2, it sets the value of the cell, right? So anything that you do at this point, any kind of keyboard stroke that alters the sheet is going to be recorded into the macro. Okay, so I'm going to hit cancel here because I don't want to save what I just did, and just kind of go back to the default there. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to record those 3 things that I need to happen to make this updating of this Gakunishi easy for me. Okay, so I'm going to go into Tools. If you want to follow along with me at this point, please feel free to. Macros and a record macro. Okay. Now, so the first thing I want to do is I want to duplicate this template file. So on a mouse, that's usually, if you go down, take your cursor down. On a mouse, it's a right click. If it's on a mouse pad, it might be a 2-finger tap. But in any case, you need this menu to kind of pop up, and the option to duplicate is there. So you click that, and you see this copy of template showing up. The one thing about Sheets, or I think even in Excel, is 2 sheets cannot be the same name. It has to be 2 unique, it has to be unique names. So that's why you see this copy of come up in the front. Okay, so that was step 1. Step 2 is now I have to move that sheet to the far left so that it shows up when the student opens the file for the first time. And that's just very simple, click and drag. Okay, and you see the action to move sheet tab show up there. So that's 2 of the 3 functions that have been completed to make this process simple for me. The third one is the rename, and this one's actually a little bit trickier. Okay, I want to rename this to the day's date. However, doing that just through the macro I cannot do. Okay, so I'm just going to go back to this menu here, either through the right finger click or the double finger click, depending if you're using a mouse or a pad. And I'm just going to click rename. And for the time being, I'm just going to type in rename. Okay. So, and that's the third action. All right. So now I have all the keyboard strokes that I want to make. So I'm just going to hit save. Right. And this little window says save new macro pops up. You want to give it a name. So I'm just going to rename it new sheet. Okay. You can rename it anything you want. And then down here with the shortcut, this is where you want to set it as a number. Okay, so if you have multiple macros, you might have macro 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is the only macro that's a part of this. So I'm just going to set it as 1. At this point, I'm going to hit save. Okay, saving new macro. Macro is saved. Okay, so to check to see if this works on your keyboard, right? You just hold down those 4 buttons. Again, I'm using a Mac, so I'm using Command Option. If you're on a Windows, it'll be Control Alt. But those 2 plus Shift and plus 1 together. Okay. When you do it for the first time, you might be asked for authorization. If you get that, just hit Continue. Just make sure you have your proper email checked off, and just down at the bottom, allow. And you only have to do that one time. And as you can see, and then you try again. So Control Option Shift 1. Okay. And you should see the copy of pop up. Okay. You might get this little red error up here. It's just telling you that a sheet of the same name already exists. So that doesn't really mean anything. So you can just dismiss that. But if it works, you should see that new sheet pop up. Not only you get the new sheet, but it's a duplicate of that template and it's moved over to the far left. So instead of doing these 3 steps, which doesn't seem like a lot, but just can add time to your already busy day, just a couple seconds clicking on those keys gives you what you need for the day. Okay. Now, as I said before, I want this to be the day's date. Okay. And so this is where it gets a little bit tricky. But what you can do, if you've never seen this before, if you go back to tools, you go to macros, aside from record macros, you now have a manage macros that's available. And if you click on that, you should see the list of macros that you have recorded. So in this case, the new sheet, which is macro 1, and then you hate to see these little 3, 10, 10, 10s, 3 dots here. If you click on that, you have the option to edit the script. Okay. And this is kind of interesting to look at. If you've never noticed, if you've never seen code before, this is pretty much is what's recorded when you are recording your macro. And so you don't have to know how to code to kind of look at this. But if you see here, duplicate active sheet, right? That was the first action. Move action sheet, that was the second one. And then this last one, set name. So those were the 3. But it's this rename that I want to change. I want to change it to the day's date. Now, I'm not a coder and I don't know how to do that. But there are a lot of resources online that you can go to where you can actually probably find your solution. And one example is a website called Stack Overflow, which I think is also part of Google. Google actually references Stack Overflow in their developers website. And if you go into the search and just type in your question, there's a good chance that you can find a line of code that could possibly help you figure out what it is that you want to do with that particular macro. In this case, I already put the question in and decided on one answer to look at. Was this particular line right here that I'm highlighting. Okay, so this VAR, that's short for variable, and it sets the variable for a date. And in this case, it sets for a new date. So usually what you do in this case is I can just copy, and then going back to the window that has the macros coding in it, I can just very easily do a paste. I think there is some order to coding. So in this case, I see a similar line here that has the VAR. So I'm just going to put what I copied underneath there like that. Okay. And so, and then there's actually one other change I need to make. I already know this because I did this like 2 years ago. So I'm just going to put this in manually. But I need to set the time to Japan, which is this GMT +9 in the double quotations. Okay, so now I have the variable for the date, but now, so the set name down here, I need to change that from rename to this variable of the date. So to do that, inside the brackets, just kind of erase everything, including the quotations, and I just type in, oops, hold on, sorry. Okay, and just type in date. Okay. So once I have that edited, I can just you want to make sure you save the project. Okay. And then if you want to see if it works, you go back to your sheet here, and then just initiate the macro again. So Control Option Shift 1. And if it works, you should see today's date pop up. So now 2021, August 24th. And that's it. So what this does for me now is that once I go into the entry and and read what the students have wrote, I can go ahead and just very quickly type in my content, do that keyboard shortcut, and the new sheet is ready for the next student for that day. And so a process that might take a few minutes, which doesn't seem like a long time, but if you ever, coming into the morning, setting yourself up to get ready for the day's work, a few minutes is actually quite a long time. So I've taken a few minutes and changed it to a few seconds. Okay. So here, let me go back to the. Okay, so these three things that I set out to do with that macro, is able to accomplish. All right. So just to kind of add on a couple things to share with the students, it's just very easily shared inside of Google Classroom. So we have our own homeroom classroom that we share with, and the students just very easily click on this and it goes to whatever sheet pops up. Okay. After they access the file from Classroom for the first time, the file location actually stays in their device's Google Sheets app. And so they don't actually have to go to Classroom every time to do that. They can just go to Google Sheets directly after the first time. Okay. So as a high school homeroom teacher, this became an invaluable tool that took a traditional homeroom responsibility and put a 21st century feel to it, which also reduced the possibility of virus transmission via the book during the ongoing pandemic, which was a worry for some of us. Okay. So again, duplicating a form sheets, using a macro to ease a routine process, and then using support sites like Stack Overflow to figure out more of the complex solutions. Okay, so that's what I was able to do. It made my morning a lot easier. And on top of that, it's given me something that I can present to other school faculty and administration that I think will make it easier for them to kind of understand that the transition process from paper to paperless is not as complex as it might seem. So that in itself concludes my presentation. So what I would like to do is open the floor to discussion, and maybe more specifically, how could using either macros or something else not only just benefit your students, but maybe benefit you in your office work or anything. So if you do use any kind of automation or macros, I mean, I would love to hear what you do, or if an idea popped up in your head while I was going through this process, I'd like to hear what you have to say.
Before we get to the floor for questions, though, Edward, I would like to encourage everyone to open up their microphones, and let's give Edward a round of applause. Edward, did you need that screen up while we're taking questions?
No, I don't. So
Yeah,
I can
might be easier to see you.
Okay, let's see. So stop share, right?
Yep.
There we go.
Okay. So questions, anyone? You can raise your hand in the participants list using the raise hand button in the reactions panel at the bottom of the screen, or I think we're a small enough group now, Edward, we can probably just let people open up their mics. Oh, Susan will be first. Open up their mics, or Susan, why don't you open up your mic?
Yep, sorry, I thought I had done that. Okay, thank you for your presentation. I appreciate it. I don't use Google Docs or Google Sheets or any of the Google products very much, but recently I was in a situation where I needed to, so I appreciate your making your presentation understandable for those of us who have very little experience with Google products. I'm wondering, what kind of device did the students use? Was it a shared device? You said that this, one advantage to this was not having to pass a notebook around and thereby pass a virus around at the same time. Right. So what kind of device were the students working on? Did they have individual devices?
Well, no, they were actually using their own cell phones.
Oh, they did this on their cell phones.
They did this on their cell phones. Actually, our school's actually going to a one-to-one program next year. So, they'll have a more, concrete device to use. But for the last 2 years, they've just been using their own cell phones, and they haven't had any issues with it. After they did the task the first time, it just became routine after that.
Okay, and just to follow up with that, are they using any other like Google Docs or Google Slides or any other platforms? Are you getting them used to using some of these apps regularly besides for this one particular function?
Oh yeah, definitely. Our essay activities are regularly done through Google Classroom and Google Docs. We've been toying with the other apps as well. So yes, they use Google Classroom quite often.
Oh, that's
So,
fantastic. Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Yeah,
Mhm.
that was one of the big challenges for us who are teaching at university level, because last year when we went online, suddenly a lot of our students didn't have that background. They didn't have those skills or knowledge that they needed to sort of jump in and start even feeling like they could jump into a new app and just try it out and see what it was about. They were really scared and confused.
Yeah. No, it's
that's
the
wonderful.
exact same situation in high schools, because students, computer use is not a regular thing in high school or junior high school. They're trying to make it a thing in the elementary schools, but junior high school, it's still this, it's still, writing, lecture, take a test, get ready for high school. And in high school, it's the exact same thing, just getting ready for university. And so computer use has never been a major skill that they felt is needed. There is this JOHL, or informatics course class that students take, which is, they only have to take it for 1 year. And I think it's only like 1 or 2 credits, so 1 or 2 hours. And that's where they get introduced to how to type. But, as I mentioned, our particular course at our high school, we have 4 courses in our school. Our particular course have always pushed technology use quite early on. So as soon as they get into high school in the first year, we have a classroom set of iPads that we put in front of them. We start trying to get them comfortable with doing activities digitally, so that hopefully that can help prepare them for a more digital life after high school.
Fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Duncan?
Yeah, thanks, Edward. Thanks for that. That was super interesting. I'm not very skilled with stuff, so if this is a dumb question, but
Mhm.
Is there the chance that maybe accidentally or something that one student could mess with what you said and delete everything that's done before? Or did you have any issues with that or risk?
Not yet.
Right.
I think one thing about the macros is that the macros cannot be recorded or edited on a mobile device. It can
Right.
only be done through a web browser on a computer, it seems like.
Okay.
One of the things that I did not show is that I didn't want students to see this template. So I could actually take the template and hide it so the students can't see it. And even though it's hidden, I can still execute the macro and a new blank sheet would pop up.
Okay.
So the students, for the most part, don't even know that that template is there or exists in that file.
Right.
And then the practice that I've done is after I've gone through and made my comments on the page, I would usually go in and protect the sheet
Yeah.
so that the students cannot edit it after that.
Yeah.
The teachers who have access to it, myself and my other homeroom teacher partner, would still be able to edit it if we felt like it, but editing access was taken away from everyone else at that time.
Yeah.
So the only editable sheet that is available is the sheet of that day.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just when you were saying that it sometimes ends up being kind of a memento for the home class teacher,
Yeah.
I thought, what a disaster if something happened, you know, like
Right.
you said, students sometimes. And the other one, I don't know if this is crazy, but seeing what you did, getting the macros to create a new sheet and change date, is there not a way that you can tell it to just do that every day at the same time, and then you don't even need to do?
You know, I'm sure there is a way. I just haven't looked into it.
Okay.
But the where I was showing you the coding that the
Yeah.
macros create, that is called Google App Script,
Okay.
and that's actually how the add-ons are created that you can put
Okay.
into Google Docs or Forms or whatnot. And so I'm sure there's a way to set a timer on that new sheet. I just haven't looked into it.
Sure. Okay.
But
Well,
it's a
thanks.
I think I think it's a good idea for others to hold on to as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Great. Thanks for answering that for me. Thank you.
Who'd like to go next? Edward,
Yes.
what kind of feedback did you get from the students about doing this? Did they say that, oh, I don't like doing this, I got to use my own phone, I'm chewing up data on my phone? Any complaints, or was it like an amazing sort of welcome from the kids? Go, wow, sensei kakkoi na to. Wow.
To be honest, I haven't received neither positive nor negative feedback from the students. That particular daily journal is just a routine for them, so I don't know if there's any second thought about it. There are a couple of students that are just not digitally literate, and from time to time, they'll just come up to me and say, I forgot how to do this or that, can you show me again? And that's pretty much all it is. I've never received either positive or negative feedback from the students.
Well, in a sense, if you don't get any feedback, that's kind of like good feedback. Like it
Yeah,
doesn't stand
like
out.
no news is good news, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Rhett.
I guess I was wondering if you could use like the same sort of journal process and creating the macros to create some sort of like co-created journal for the students to each write in something about the class. So every student has a responsibility to type in one little thing. So all students work together to create one working journal, because I've got 6 kids who are all very, they're young learners, grade 1 to grade 3, and they can type a little bit, but it would take too much time to really fill in a whole form. So I was thinking about giving them all access to one sort of area. What are your thoughts about that?
Oh, I mean, I think that's extremely possible. I think one of the nice things about the Google Workspace apps is that you can control who can edit, who cannot edit, and whatnot. So with this particular sheet, it's just one student a day. But if you wanted multiple students to access that file, you just have to give them permission to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Forgot again. Otherwise, just to remind you, Edward,
Yeah.
it's okay. Where's my mug that says you're muted? Just to remind you that, let's see, I think we're 2 minutes before your slotted end time, but we do have a couple minutes if you get into a heated discussion with someone about something. Otherwise, anybody? Anything?
I was just kind of curious if
Oh.
you could make like check boxes and all sorts of different options as well.
Oh yeah, in the spreadsheet you can definitely do that. If I show you, let me see is it all right if I share my screen again real quick?
Go man.
All
You
right.
still have the same privys.
Okay, hold on a sec. Let's see here. Okay, so from this example that I was showing of the students' work, I actually had set the dates. So when they click on the cell, it actually brings up the options of the day, or in this case, the options of the month, or in this case, which day of the week it is. So you can set up drop-down menus, you can set up checkboxes. You can pretty much set up anything that you think is necessary for however you want to use this particular file. I mean, if you're familiar with Excel, Google Sheets pretty much is a duplicate of that, almost.
Interesting. Thank you.
I
Susan,
have a question. Sorry.
go John. Go John.
I have an application where I'm using Excel to make a template of something that I then copy into Edmodo for my daily assignments. And each week, for each class, I have to change certain things within the thing, but certain other things are exactly the same. So like the name of today's topic, or the date, or the time that it's due, or something like that. I assume that all of that could possibly be automatized, because right now I'm doing it all manually, and it's just a matter of finding someone to teach me how to do that, I guess. Is there any
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, aside from what I was showing, that Stack Overflow homepage, that could probably, if you just type in the question there, there's a good chance someone else has asked the same question. But Google itself also has its list of add-ons, and the add-ons are pretty much the exact same thing as a macro. It's just a script.
Mhm.
So I've seen add-ons for particular journal work or grade sheets or whatnot. So I think it's just a matter of just going into that search and seeing if something's already available or not.
Okay, I assume that the same thing would be available for Excel, because I'm using Excel right now, and I don't particularly want to switch everything over to Google just for that convenience, I guess. Or maybe I
Probably.
do.
I'm not an expert at Excel, so I'm
Yeah,
not
yeah.
I'm not sure what resources are available, but I'm sure there's
Yeah.
something out there.
Okay,
Okay.
Adam.
Hey, I just thought I would draw your attention to the chat where Ishko, since there has added 2 comments and some question in the second comment. So, yeah, cannot speak out because in the office staff room. So,
Okay. Have you ever used this idea for other kind of journals like Club Ninja or Club Activities Journal and how they turn out? No, I have not. We're actually using a different system, and Naoko Sensei, you're familiar with Classy, that actually has all that kind of journal options there. And so, to my understanding, clubs that have initiated any kind of journal use have been using Classy as their journal entries.
You okay, Edward?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay, yes, certainly stop there. And anything else?
I don't think so. I guess maybe just to finish it off then. These tools are available to us. As I mentioned at the beginning, I'm not an expert at Google Workspace. I'm not an expert in Apple's applications or anything like that, but I do see myself more as kind of like a puzzler. So if the challenge is there, I think the solutions are there as well. And again, it's just, learning little things. I think the macros is an extremely simple way to automatize something that you do every day or daily. But again, if you go into Stack Overflow or you go into any kind of other search and just start typing in your questions, there's a good chance you can find a solution there that might work for you. Whatever that may be.
Okay, then how about one final round of applause before we officially stop this? And you'll probably finish up your recording too, Edward. Anyway, round of applause.